Hello and welcome to another podcast by GEOSTRATA. Today we have with us Miss Ambassador Ruchi Ghanashayam, who, as the First Lady Diplomat posted to High Commission of India in Islamabad, served as an important role in the complex relationship between India and Pakistan. Today, we will be talking about the challenges a woman encounters in a male-dominated profession of that of diplomat, as reflected in her book, Indian Women in Islamabad, 1997 to 2000. But before we certainly dive into that podcast, how are you feeling, ma'am?
I am very well. Thank you, Anmol. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I didn't realize that writing a book would get me linked up with such so many young people.
So, certainly reading your book through made me realize how many insights you shared being the first lady diplomat in Pakistan, and there were plethora of questions that came along with that. So the first question that I would like to ask you would be, since you had multiple interaction with locals outside the work as well, maybe through friends or relatives or anyone that you come across on daily basis, do you think there is a certain kind of fear that local Pakistani people hold when they see or hear about Indians? In addition, do you believe that Pakistan's offensive stance against India benefits its politics more than its people?
Thank you so much. Those are very interesting questions. But before we jump into that, let me clarify that I was the first woman in the High Commission in Islamabad, but not in Pakistan. We had another lady diplomat who did serve in Karachi earlier. So, to that extent, I thought it should be honest to one should be honest. Now, coming to your question, the average Pakistani person that I came across did not really have a fear of Indians. In fact, the people that I met, most of them were very, very warm and nice to us. Even during the Kargil war, I have narrated some of these incidents in the book about how people were exceptionally kind and went out of the way to be nice to us. Uh, on the other question, whether the government's policies favor the politics rather than the people, at one point, I think I have written in the book about how I used to wonder about this question myself, whether the people of Pakistan were actually the real victims of the politics of that country. And sometimes I did feel that that was the case. But uh, may not be fair actually to say that every government or every policy was aimed only at benefiting the government rather than the people. That wouldn't be fair. But yes, to a large extent, when it comes to the policy towards India, for example, it would tend to be more beneficial to the establishment. And the army is a big part of that.
That's certainly true that every government come up with certain policy that do benefit. And then you shared rightful insight about how Pakistani offensive stance somewhere somewhat exists against India in that sort of way. Um, so moving to next question, even if Pakistani people were and locals were so welcoming towards you, you do share a few of the excerpts from the book itself that talks about shadows and
Yes.
ongoing and shadows particularly. So despite the
Yeah.
diplomatic immunity you hold, you
Yeah.
frequently encounter these tales and shadows going beyond and even harassing sometimes. So did you
Yes.
feel that being a woman in a
Yeah.
male-dominated world of diplomacy, you were not subjected to the same degree of privileges, and these incidents were more frequent with you to initiate fears and was used as a tactics on you more than your male counterparts?
That's again another very interesting question. Uh, it is true that since I was the first woman to serve in the Indian High Commission in Islamabad, that perhaps the Pakistani establishment did not really know how to deal with me. I mean, they may have thought it was, perhaps if they do certain kind of um shadowing or certain kind of slightly intimidatory tactics, that I would be intimidated. And I think that that attempt uh, was born out of the overall stereotype of women that the establishment in Pakistan probably held about women in general. That, women should be timid, or they should be quiet, or, they should be there, but not, to be seen and not heard. So perhaps that was what they thought, and that motivated their effort to intimidate me at times. Diplomatic immunity, of course, because they never physically harmed me, and though they were very, very visible, but they did not really. There was, there was always a distance, so there was no reason to actually complain that they physically harassed me. And in that sense, it's like a gray area where they operated. But my male colleagues also suffered. I mean, some of them actually may have been subjected even to more aggressive tailing. So it was a policy, it was an approach that they followed generally towards Indian diplomats, and selectively somebody uh, maybe received a little bit more than others, or at times one person was in the focus and then somebody else. But for example, my car was never boxed in. When the boxing in, my colleagues explained to me, is when one car comes right in front and one car comes right behind you. So your car is boxed in. You can't go forward, you can't go backwards. So I was spared that. But I know that uh, at least one of my colleagues did experience that. In my case, they did, aggressive driving, and that was a little bit intimidating. But uh, that's part of the game. So I didn't allow that to put me down.
That certainly makes sense on how these shadow work, and
Yes,
certainly will, as a woman, more I'm able to understand that how intimidating it would be. It was not only a foreign land to you, but
yes,
also you were subjected to like deal and balance your duties and everything in
yes,
between, and it still exists as a separate entity and being a woman in that
yes,
particular scenario.
yes,
So, since we are talking about what stereotype revolved around, being
yeah,
surrounded by a male chauvinistic society like Pakistan, were there
yeah.
instances where you played to suit the stereotypical role of a woman or mother or a diplomat? If so, what was these stereotypes going around, and how did they affected you on a longer term?
Yeah. Well, one of the things which really used to irk me a little was this practice of separating men and women. Like there's this. Uh, it it naturally happens in all social gatherings, even in not all, but yeah, most social gatherings, even in India, that women tend to flock together and men tend to flock together. But there's no like segregation as such. I mean, men and women do move between the groups and talk to each other. Yeah, but in some places in Pakistan, for example, uh, there was this complete segregation, women in one room and the men in another room. And being a professional woman, it is important to talk about some of the uh, developments that are going on. So that was, I mean, it's not that I was trying to play myself down, but the situation was such that I had to, just
Hmm.
live with the way it was. But otherwise, they did try to tail me in a very somewhat offensive manner. Uh, on one for a fairly long period, actually, in one instance, and that did affect me when I was there. In fact, I remember having some bad dreams at night about that. But uh, I think it is like they this is something that one expected them to do, to try and get under your skin. And it is, whether it's a man or a woman, one way or another, it was their attempt to find the weakness in the person and to exploit that to the extent possible. So, being a professional diplomat, I understood that. And I don't think I really played to their stereotype.
Certainly, you came off as a very strong woman, even reading the book thoroughly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, so since we talk about how being a woman looked like in the world of diplomacy, I believe being any woman living in a patriarchal world that basically moves to mostly every of the global culture, and it's not
Yes,
particularly to Pakistan.
yes,
Women face many more challenges.
yes.
So on one hand, you were not only a diplomat, but you also had the responsibility of a mother,
Yeah,
which in a lot many cultures are again glorified.
yes.
So did you face like judgments when it comes to your job and when it comes to your role as a mother? And how did those judgment impacted you?
Yeah. Uh, it's not just in Pakistan, and it is not, as you said, it is like everywhere that women have to battle. It's all, I think the uphill journey that women, professional women, have to make is probably a bit harder than that which their male counterparts have to make. And a lot of that, as you said, has to do with the stereotyping of women as being better for certain kinds of jobs rather than other kinds of jobs. So, for example, in my very first posting, I remember that on the first National Day celebration, every 15th of August and 26th of January, every embassy raises the flag, on 15th August and unfurls the flag on 26th January. And all Indians in the country and friends of India, it's an open house, they're all invited. So in my first posting, I was asked to be in charge of serving tea to the guests. Now, that job was given to me because I was a woman. I presume it was never said, but that was what I presumed. I had been brought up by my father to stay out of the kitchen. In fact, if me and my sisters, if anybody was seen to be working too long in the kitchen, he used to get upset because he would say that, you'll never do anything beyond the kitchen if you just keep sitting in the kitchen. So I had no idea how much time it takes to boil water for 100 people or 150 people. And it was perhaps the most difficult job that I did in my life because the gas burner was very small, and the patila in which the person who was making tea had kept the water was too large, and it wasn't even getting warm, let alone start boiling. And in the end, I realized that we have to maybe divide it into two. And I think we made like half boiled water, we turned it to tea and somehow served the tea. And that's what, one of the things that I always recall from that incident is that if I have to tell young people today about young women, today I would certainly tell them that no matter where you go in life or what you do, what you achieve, but being a woman will always stay. That's the first identity that we have, and part of those are these stereotypes, and you have to be prepared for that as well. So it's not just about Pakistan. It is, there are times when I was walked around for when I was in charge of administration, and my bosses pointed out where the dirt was. But I don't think male officers who serve in that capacity get taken around like that the same way as a woman is. So it's not just about Pakistan. I think women generally have a harder challenge that they have to deal with. Plus, they have multiple roles. women have to, and it's becoming harder and harder for younger women today, because at least in our times, uh, it was difficult at times, but at least help was available, whether from family or from, otherwise. But it's becoming harder and harder for young women, and I really admire young women who take on these challenging jobs along with the challenge of raising a family, looking after a husband. So I think all women have to do that. I don't think I'm special in that regard.
I believe being a woman is special in itself to start with.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Uh, Moving on with the next question. So, since not in your book, you also mentions about various war that takes place. One of them was about the Operation Cleanup of 1992. So, do you believe that there is a difference in which the numerical or the religious minorities are treated in India versus how they are treated in Pakistan?
It's a, I think it's a very difficult question to answer, because what I have described in my book is happened in Pakistan more than 25 years ago. So I'm not even sure if today's Pakistan reflects the same or worse or better. And I have absolutely no, not absolutely, but it's very difficult for me to try and recall what was India like 25 years ago, and how one can compare, what I have written about Pakistan to what happened in India. But having said that, there are some very obvious, I think, markers that one can talk about. For example, the blasphemy laws, about under which in my book I have described the Christian man being charged with having written blasphemous material in Arabic, though he did not really know Arabic. So I don't think any such thing exists in India. Or, for example, Ahmadiyas not being able to call themselves Muslims. There are Ahmadiyas in India, in Qadian and elsewhere, and there is no such restriction or limitation imposed on them for practicing their faith. So that is unique to Pakistan as well. The extremist, radical extremist groups, very violent, like Sipah-e-Sahaba or Lashkar-e-Jhangvi or Lashkar-e-Labeg. I mean, they are basically aimed at sectarian violence, violence against minorities, whether it is Shias or whether it is other minorities. And then there is violent groups that, between the Deobandis and the Barelvis. So these are actually very unique to Pakistan. Uh, None of this exists in India. So I think it is like trying to compare apples and oranges. The situation of people in India, minorities, religious, numerical minorities or otherwise, is different, and the atmosphere in Pakistan is different.
So a lot many times we see Indian population getting like all round up on how minorities are treated. So it's not because certainly they are comparing more so, as you said, the different environments altogether rather than understanding what exactly is making both of those countries' characteristics at the very base level different from each other, right?
I'm
Um,
not trying to suggest that India is absolutely perfect or there are no problems in India. But just to say that the problems in India are completely different from the problems in Pakistan.
certainly,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah,
Uh, I believe one of the problem that continues regardless of what geographical boundaries we are surrounded by in the world when it
hmm,
comes to women is that of sadly honor killing and honor revenge,
yeah,
and is somehow associated with our gender of
yeah,
being a woman more than
yes,
the other. Be it
yeah,
any war, be it any religious persecution or protest, women exist as the most suffered strata of of
yes,
among the people. So
yeah,
how can we as a society overcome this practice of honor killing or honor revenge? In
yeah,
addition, how we can create an environment where we grow equally, both men
yeah,
and women, rather than giving women and providing them a tokenistic equality just in a
Yes.
name of it.
Yeah. No, no, this is, I think, the crux of the matter. And this is a societal problem that affects, uh, I think, more or less all the societies in the world. I'm sure there are some that are better and some that are worse, but it is a problem existing in every society. Uh, I think there is no shortcut and there is no magic wand for changing the situation of women. But the only way it can be done is through education and empowerment of women. And I believe that every woman who is empowered in her own way has to make this contribution for other women. And that's one of the reasons, that's in fact not one of the reasons, that's the reason my book is called An Indian Woman in Islamabad, and not an Indian diplomat in Islamabad. Because I think I'm, first and foremost, of course, I'm an Indian, I'm a human being and a woman. So bearing that in mind, I feel also that I do have a responsibility to make other women feel, if I can, that there is a world that's possible. There are dreams that they can dream, and they can achieve and they can manage. So I think it's not just for me, but for every one of us to try and do something to encourage, to empower the women around us. If we see somebody who lacks the confidence, we should try and boost that confidence. And slowly, I think between the time that even in my life, I have seen changes in India. I mean, one can't talk of the rest of the world, but in India, there is a change. It is not that suddenly there is no problem. But there things are changing. The position of women is different from, there are more women in many professional fields today. Just to talk about this interview, I mean, both of us are women. I I think that itself is, there are indications like this in different, from different fields that one can find. And so that's how it has to be, that women have to be encouraged, and men have a role in this as well. It's not just for women. In my life, if but for my father, I don't think I would have achieved anything in my life. So men have a role too, and a big role, because and a bigger responsibility, because they are already the stronger of the two sexes. And I think that's the only way. Education, empowerment, especially financial empowerment, these are very important factors.
I do certainly share your view when you talk about how men do hold the equally and even more responsibility when it comes to like women empowerment rather than women itself.
Yeah,
Because it's very important for them to acknowledge the discrimination of ages that our gender has faced throughout, and then pushing towards becoming and making the better change. Because certainly I
yes,
don't believe it's a race of superiority of gender to establish one gender above other. Rather, it's
not at
more
all.
about establishing equal grounds for both of them.
Yes, like two wheels of a cart.
Certainly.
Yes,
Moving back to India and Pakistan, one very interesting question that popped in my mind while reading the book was how, with your experience of working and understanding Pakistan, because you do highlight in few chapters what exactly Pakistan, or like how you see Pakistan from your
yes.
lens per se. Can India and Pakistan emerge as a single power in the Indo-Pacific in order to keep the other global players at the periphery, given that they were once a single nation with deeply ingrained cultures and interpersonal ties?
Yeah. So India and Pakistan, started off by as being being one country. In the foreseeable future, I see that the two will stay that way. I mean, we are not going to be together fighting in the Indian Ocean or Indo-Pacific or anywhere. We at independence, the two countries took different trajectories. So while India was non-aligned and did not believe in aligning with any of the two superpowers, Pakistan followed a different path. It joined CENTO and SEATO, and it was very close to the US. Today, uh, again, Pakistan is very close to China, and I think China, if I'm not mistaken, in Pakistan, China is referred to as the all-weather friend. There is a big tussle between India and China as well. There is a complex relationship between India and China. Let's put it that way to simplify. So the two are in two different spaces, and so long as the military remains powerful in Pakistan, it is also very difficult to envisage that they would want a relationship where there is no enemy left for Pakistan. And given the rise of these extremist groups in Pakistan over the years, over the decades actually, it is again another issue about a large vociferous section that remains opposed to any good relations with India. So, for the foreseeable future, I don't see any uh, massive or fundamental change occurring in our region. The Ideally speaking, I mean, my children, when they were young and when we were in Pakistan, my children would always say that if Indian and the Pakistani cricket teams were to play together, then our team would be invincible because of course, Imran Khan had retired by that time, but Shahid Afridi and other cricket players were so strong. And so, if they were to be part of the Indian team or Indian and Pakistani team, it would be an invincible team. But this is a nice thought, but in a very pragmatic, from a very pragmatic perspective, I don't see such a scenario happening, at least not in my lifetime.
That certainly makes sense. And you have shared a couple of insights throughout your book that talks about these pragmatics and these logical analysis on like why countries can't connect,
Yes,
given even if they were part a single entity at one given point in time.
yes, indeed.
With that, we come to the end of the questions and the podcast. If you have anything to tell or like say, you the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, it is really a great pleasure to talk to you. As I said at the beginning of our interview, I did not realize that writing a book would get me to talk to so many nice young people. Well, I think just I don't know if you can see this.
We can
This is
certainly see it.
yeah, this is my
I
book, and I would
also hold,
request
I also do hold the book with like
okay.
anecdotes and everything.
Yeah, so I would, I have written the book because I, uh, I, I wanted to share these experiences with people. Uh, I've, Ever since my husband and I served in Islamabad, we have always been flooded with questions about what it was like to live there, what it was like to work there. So this book actually tries to answer those questions. But at the same time, I have tried to bring in a lot of information about different aspects of life in Pakistan's policies, uh, different laws that exist over there, even a little bit about the different issues that are irritants in India-Pakistan relations. So I hope people will like it, and I hope that those who hear your podcast will read my book. Yeah.
I hope everyone certainly do, because my favorite part certainly from the book was, apart from all the information and the geopolitical aspect of the book, was seeing the relation through your eyes, through a lens of a woman. That made me
Yeah.
understand so much about so many things. I feel like personally being one made me feel things while reading the book. So would
Yeah.
personally recommend all of them out there to read that.
Thank you so much. Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.